Hello and welcome back to the RPAG Scoop, your ultimate source for all things retirement. I'm Ashley, the Senior Marketing Specialist here at RPAG, and I'm here to give you the scoop. As we embrace this spring season of renewal and growth, I'm thrilled to talk about an exciting event that will surely put a spring in your step. And of course, I'm talking about the RPAG Regional Summits starting this week. You'll get ready to bask in the warmth of industry-leading speakers, interactive sessions blooming with valuable insights, and a gourmet dinner at a local restaurant that will tantalize your taste buds. Picture this, a vibrant atmosphere filled with the buzz of conversation and the aroma of freshly bloomed flowers. Our summits are not only about sharing knowledge, they're about cultivating connections, nurturing growth, and embracing the spirit of collaboration. From engaging panel discussions to hands-on workshops, there's something for everybody at our summits. And let's not forget about that gourmet dinner experience. You will be savoring delectable delights from local restaurants in each city, all while surrounded by fellow industry professionals who share your passion for retirement excellence. It's more than just a meal, it's a celebration of new beginnings and endless possibilities that spring brings. But the excitement doesn't end there. At our regional summits, you will also have the opportunity to ask our speakers whatever questions that your mind creates. It's a chance for you to engage directly with industry leaders and experts and gain valuable insights that will propel your career. And speaking of sessions, I am excited to be hosting my very own called Leveraging AI for Marketing Your Practice at the Philadelphia and Chicago Regional Summits. But don't worry, if you still want to see it and you're going to the San Diego or Atlanta Summits, my counterpart Melody will be speaking and doing the same session at those. But as a reminder, we are the last session of day 2, so don't skip out early. If you want to see this, please make sure you stay. Come join us. We are very excited to have you, and we will have special prizes for those who engage in our session. So don't miss this incredible opportunity to grow with us at the RPAG Regional Summits. If you haven't registered by now, do it ASAP, hop to it, and get ready to embrace the spirit of spring in the most exciting way possible. We will see you there. Now let's get back to why we're actually here today. So here's a glimpse of what's in store for you for the April RPAG Scoop. First, we have 2 of our ASAs, Reese and Alexis, who will update you on the latest changes in the RPAG platform. From our video educational series to the introduction of the Census Copilot Small Market 401k solution for RFP Express, get ready to level up your skills and explore some exciting opportunities. Take it away, YouTube.
Thanks, Ashley. Now with the What's New at RPAG segment. My name's Alexis Patnode.
And I'm Reese Wong, and we are Advisor Service Associates here at RPAG, part of that support staff.
Starting with new portal and product enhancements. RPAG University is a video learning curriculum filled with 3 to 5 minute videos covering a multitude of topics. These include an overview of RPAG, how-to videos, our methodologies, the plan fees suite, as well as differentiators. These videos are targeted towards advisors who are looking to master the RPAG portal, as well as any new members of the firm looking to see what RPAG has to offer.
Next, on to RFP Express. For anyone not familiar with RFP Express, it is our streamlined provider analysis that allows you to build RFP and benchmarking reports in an instant. We've made some recent tech enhancements to RFP Express, including a new solution called a Census Copilot Small Market 401k solution, which is now available on RFP Express. Copilot is a simple, cost-effective 401k retirement plan that eases the administrative burden of offering a 401k plan to your employees. Through a clear, skillfully selected 401k plan design, Copilot allows you to free up your time to focus on running your business. Check it out now on RFP Express. To stay up to date with which providers are on RFP Express, don't forget to check out our provider overview on the Resource Center. Find this in the Resource Center, go to the RFP fee benchmarking dropdown, then select RFP Express tab. Recently, we have rebranded our Rollover Analyzer tool to Rollover Ready. We introduced this tool because rollover recommendations are a primary concern of the Department of Labor. As seen quoted, the decision to roll over assets from a plan to an IRA is often the single most important decision a plan participant makes involving a lifetime of retirement savings. This shows that the Department of Labor is concerned with participants who make rollover decisions and want to ensure that they are educated on making any rollover decisions. As a result, the Department of Labor introduced PTE 2020-02. In response, we created the Rollover Ready tool which satisfies all documentation requirements set forth by PTE 2020-02.
As advisor service associates, we often get a lot of questions related to tech enhancements. Here are a few of the most commonly asked ones.
Where does the feedback and suggestions end up?
When an advisor submits their feedback or suggestions, we submit them to our systems development team where they're logged.
How does RPAG and advisors track these suggestions?
We track these suggestions through that log as well as using ticket numbers.
Do all suggestions get approved?
Unfortunately, not all suggestions get approved. However, all suggestions do get reviewed by our systems development committee.
When a suggestion is approved, when does it go live on the portal?
When the suggestion is approved, we let the advisor who submitted the question know that it was accepted, and then we let them know an estimated time of arrival.
What is the best way to submit a portal enhancement?
The best way to submit a portal enhancement is either by emailing us at support@rpag.com, calling us using the phone number located at the bottom of all RPAG pages, using the Contact Us button also located at the bottom of all RPAG pages, or by using our Ask RPAG feature.
And lastly, how are issues and system bugs identified?
If a system bug is identified by one of our members, we recommend they let us know so we are able to do some troubleshooting and let our systems development team know. And if we find the bug as a company and it is spread across a large number of members, we will post it to the front page of our RPAG portal using a banner or within our Spotlight section.
Now for a new segment, Ask an ASA. What ERISA resources are available?
As RPAG members, you have access to unlimited email ERISA resources, as well as documents written by our ERISA team available within our Resource Center. When are strategy equivalents available for flexPATH CITs?
Previously, strategy equivalents would fall off of our flexPATH CITs once the fund started scoring on its own. We received some feedback from advisors that you all would like to keep the strategy equivalent attached to the fund. So until further notice, all flexPATH CITs will have strategy equivalents attached. What does HIS, SPC, and OTH mean on the scorecard?
Great question. HIS stands for history, SPC stands for specialty, and OTH stands for other. All notations you may see on a scorecard if a fund is not able to score. For an asset class review, why do the funds not always show up on the same page?
Funds on an asset class review are grouped by asset class. Therefore, if the funds that you are creating or running an asset class review on are in different asset classes, they may show up on separate pages in the report. How do I schedule additional training with RPAG?
You can schedule additional training with RPAG by contacting us via email, phone number located at the bottom of all RPAG pages, using the Contact Us button also at the bottom of all RPAG pages, or using the Ask RPAG feature. How do I stay up to date with RPAG enhancements and news?
To stay up to date with everything RPAG, please follow us on our socials. You can find us on YouTube where we post tech enhancement shorts, and you can also follow our blog where we're constantly putting out new material. Thanks for joining us for What's New on the Scoop.
Now back to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Alexis and Reese. I am feeling pretty pumped to go on the RPAG portal after this. You'll be able to see both of them at our regional summits as well, along with Matt Giovinazzo, who happens to actually be our next speaker. He just let me know he'll be kicking back and enjoying the nice California weather as he goes into the intricacies of passive target date funds. You'll hear some key industry trends, strategies for differentiation, and insights from a recent white paper by their team.
I'm not using a virtual background. I am in Palm Springs. I have a fun topic for you today, differentiating passive target date funds. We know the general trend. Fees are going down. It's a race to zero. I think it's becoming harder and harder to differentiate passive target date funds from each other aside from the fees. And frankly, now the fees for the top passive TDFs, the difference is like 1, 2, 3, 4 basis points different. And there's so much beyond. I mean, that's just splitting hairs, right? It's cents, not even dollars at this point. So I wanted to kind of give some perspectives as far as what you can be looking at to differentiate when one series might be better than another. First things first, it's really not just about fees. As I mentioned, it's cents, not dollars a lot of the time. And I'm saying that from a position of having a co-manufactured or a record keeper affiliated product with pretty much every main record keeper where we're getting up to a 10 basis point discount. So I am encouraging you to don't just look at fees. And that is likely in my best interest if you use Empower, Voya, Fidelity, Principal, a lot of different record keepers. It's not about to versus through either. I think this is really the worst argument that used to be a proxy for twos were more conservative because there was only really one at the time that started. Throughs were more aggressive. That's not the case today. I've got this white paper that we wrote as a team, and it goes into this whole argument, kind of debunking why this is even important. It's really like such an ancillary factor. The white paper's cool. At some point, we should probably do a TD brief on this, but this really isn't important. What is important, and really what remains the driving factor, in my opinion, as well as the DOLs, they mention aligning the target date fund with participant characteristics. This whole concept of suitability we've talked about time and time again. So I'm approaching this more from the perspective of to versus through, which again, maybe we'll go into more later. But I mean, you just have such a vast difference between these different glide paths in terms of their equity composition, thus their risk, thus their drawdowns. Right. This is the financial crisis in 2008. Aggressive TDFs lost double conservative TDFs with a range of -10% to -51%. Many of you have seen this. If you look at like 2020 during the drawdown of the pandemic, you kind of saw the same patterns repeated, with aggressive TDFs losing about 25% and conservative TDFs losing 11%. That's a huge difference, right? Picture someone in retirement losing 10%, it's a blip on the radar. I mean, it's still substantial, but 10 versus 25 is very important. So again, it kind of comes back to suitability is going to be the biggest thing with passive target date funds. As you know, we have our fit analysis, our RPAG fit analysis. That's this aim before you shoot exercise to ensure that you have the documentation in place for CYA. And in the end, that you're choosing a glide path that fits the needs of the most participants possible, which in the end does improve outcomes. Does it? Yes, it does. You find something that fits participant behavior, their engagement, their risk aversion. It's important to keep people invested. That's like the biggest risk for non-retirees. You need to keep them invested, need to keep them contributing. Got to factor in behavior. Got to factor in demographics. Would you design an allocation for a DB plan, not doing LDI, liability-driven investing, and matching the assets with the liabilities? You wouldn't. It'd be crazy. Well, you can do that with DC plans too. How? You look at the contribution rates, you look at the account balances, and you basically see how much risk is needed based on their replacement ratio, based on how tracked they are for retirement. They're underfunded, you take on more risk. They're well-funded, you lower your risk. So those things are very important. And again, they're for CYA. They are for a differentiator for you, by the way, because not everyone's taking this angle. They are focusing on fees. And then again, it does in fact lead to better participant outcomes. So really, what does a lot of this come down to? You probably are well aware of this. It just comes down to asset class exposure. And that's a combination of what asset classes and in what proportion. I think a lot of this just comes down to qualitative research and your perspectives and kind of philosophical thinking. In other words, to take an extreme example, if a target date fund didn't have any international equity exposure, would you like that? You probably wouldn't, but you would probably like the returns. If you were to look at the returns of a TDF without international exposure, I mean, that series would decimate any others. Look at the difference between US performance over the last 5 years versus international. So that's kind of an indicator also that you can't just look at performance, because something as egregious as not having international exposure, which is of course bad, doesn't necessarily show itself in terms of performance. To scale that back a little bit, think about just more of now, not the inclusion. All series do include international, but the weighting to it, right? Some series of 60%, US exposure, some have 70%. That 10% difference, it's not like a skillful bet. It's just the way that series is positioned. But a 10% difference, when there's an 8% difference in returns, that's an 80 basis point difference. That's huge, right? And that could be the full difference between series. And I have an entire TD brief on performance, kind of reviewing 2022 and the impact of these different asset classes kind of flip-flopping and mean reversion, et cetera. So feel free to go check that out. Now, to kind of go down this line, how would you feel if a series didn't have small cap exposure? Probably the same thing. You probably do want small cap exposure. Now, one thing to consider isn't what asset classes. We kind of got into how much of the asset class, the actual allocation, but how does the manager get that asset class? Is it from direct or indirect exposure? And here's what I mean by this. Some series for Take US Equity Exposure has a single US equity fund covering the entire market. Vanguard, for example, does this. Some series like Index Select, our co-manufactured TDF with Empower that BlackRock manages, has multiple underlying index funds making up that entire market, right? So you're getting the same overall exposure, but what is different? It's how you're getting it, right? So why does that really matter? Well, think about, do you really want the large and small cap split for investors to be the same despite their age? In other words, someone that's 25 years old in the 2065 fund to be the same as someone who's 70 in the retirement vintage? You probably don't, right? It probably makes sense to tilt large and small cap depending on where that investor is, depending in their career and depending on their time horizon, right? And this is something, frankly, that a lot of active target date funds do. Many do. American Funds does a good job of marketing theirs as a glide path within a glide path. Most, frankly, do it. But this is something that most passive TDFs do not do. It's a single fund representing that entire asset class. So that split is the same across the entire glide path. You can also look at this from a fixed income perspective with, single core fixed income representing the entire US market. For Vanguard, I think I have Fidelity up here, core fixed income. BlackRock, for example, chooses to get their US core fixed income exposure through 5 underlying bond index funds. So basically separating credit, gov, as you can see, separating duration, so long and intermediate, and then there's an asset-backed security or a securitized sleeve as well. So what this does is really same thing kind of with US equity split on steroids, where basically these different subsectors of the ag have different goals, right? Credit is more return seeking in nature. Gov exposure is more to offset equity risk, as you can see here. Really, those objectives vary throughout the life of an investor, of course, right? So for example, individuals younger in their career, the focus is more on return seeking, right? So they can have more of a credit exposure. Those individuals closer to retirement can be more on volatility reduction and offsetting equity risk, so they can have more of an overweight to gov exposure, right? So this is something that's so logical. And again, some active series do this, not so much actually with fixed income, more with equity a little bit and kind of tilting between US and international and growth to value, et cetera. But fixed income, this FIDA approach or fixed income disaggregation that BlackRock does is very unique. It's a great approach. And look, this isn't like changing anyone's life, getting them hundreds of thousands of dollars extra. But I think about this, the US equity example, we're going to go into more asset class exposure, starting out with 99% equity, the glide path, all these things, you start to add them up and it makes a big difference. So again, that comes back to, how do I feel about asset class exposure, direct versus indirect? Going down the line here, the next you might look at is tips, or really just overall, I would think about what's the inflation protection package. Most passive series forego the common real estate and commodities exposure that most active series have. So almost always you are going to see tips exposure, and that's probably not something you need to hone in on too much. Now, do you absolutely need those asset classes in order to solve for inflation? No, tips probably does a fine job, but they really have very different properties and react to inflation in different ways, as you can see on the slide here. And also there's ancillary benefits where specifically real estate is not only an inflation hedge, but can also provide equity-like return and be diversifying. So if you look at the slide here, you look at the correlation with real estate versus equities in the long term is close to zero. So you're getting a diversification benefit. You're also getting the inflation hedge. In terms of equity-like return, this is basically the returns of global REITs versus global equities. And you can see over the long period, doesn't quite match it. Real estate's gotten a little bit beat up lately. But to get equity-like return with no or little correlation while also being an inflation hedge, that's a terrific asset class. And then something you should start factoring into the expense part, right? Okay, well, if this series is 1 or a few basis points more, what are the asset classes I'm getting exposure to? How sophisticated is that asset class exposure in terms of direct versus kind of indirect, or siloing out those different parts, the FIDA again. Now, the last thing that I'll say is that so far it's kind of been the more asset classes, the better. That's not always necessarily the case. So I do think you kind of have to, you may disagree with some of the things I'm saying as far as like, real estate exposure or what have you, even though it is a part of the CFA Institute curriculum that it does enhance risk return. Anyway, these are two that BlackRock does not include. So international bonds and high yield Rationale behind high yield is, yes, it is going to likely return better than the ag, increases your return potential. Should have just read the slide, but it has a higher correlation with equities, in particular during drawdowns. There's a cool slide here that basically just shows the drawdown of high yield versus equities. And what you'll see is like overall volatility and really the movement of its returns, which of course is what standard deviation is, isn't like as high as equity, but its drawdown can be almost as bad. So I think about 2008, where equity was down 36%, high yield was down 26%. So it's really barely bond exposure, especially when you consider it from the drawdown perspective, which, by the way, I think is 100 times more important than just standard deviation. Because what are we really trying to do by protecting on the downside? We're trying to keep people invested and preventing them from bailing out. When do they bail out? After drawdown specifically. So I think high yield really doesn't make sense. BlackRock, for example, would rather just take that risk and put it into equity. International bonds is something, these slides are a little bit dated, but yes, you increase kind of international or fixed income diversification. It does introduce a lot of complexity and costs as far as hedging and currency and transaction costs. And also just the fact that if you look internationally, yields and expected returns on international bonds are not quite what they are for US. So they don't find the juices worth the squeeze there. But again, I think you have to take your own stance as far as what asset classes are just available in any passive TDF. And it's pretty much the ones I've mentioned before that BlackRock does include, and then these two. And what do you agree with? What would you want to see and not? And again, that stance has to be a 20 to 40 year kind of window, because going back to the international example, and actually one that's actually practical, is commodities. So commodities, most active managers do include that as a small sleeve, like 1, 2, 3%. It's one that didn't frankly add value until 2021 and 2022, when it was the best performing asset class and then the third best performing asset class, or maybe vice versa. But really, with a low, no inflation environment, commodities is kind of creating a little drag. Not too bad because it's a small allocation, and then obviously added a ton of value. So if you're going based on past performance, you may have chosen a TDF that didn't have commodities because it may have looked better. That would have basically made you miss out on the value added that commodities provided in those 2 years after it didn't for some time. Okay, last thing that I want to look at is tracking error. And I don't necessarily mean tracking error of the fund and its performance versus like the RPAG style benchmark, which go to the first video for kind of an explanation of how we do our custom asset allocation benchmarks, but more versus its internal spliced kind of composite benchmark. So this is a look at various TDFs listed here. And basically the return difference between the actual returns of the fund and its, again, internal custom benchmark that they assign, which has the exact same asset class exposure. So I think about this as really calculating implicit fund costs, kind of looking at what are those things, trading and rebalancing costs, not stated expenses. So it's really hard to kind of find them unless you really look at like a fact sheet, but it's something that's very important. How good is that manager at managing these internal or implicit fund costs? How good are their policies with trading and rebalancing, et cetera? And what you can see is, first of all, BlackRock is standout with this for both flexPATH and then their off-the-shelf mutual fund LifePath. And a few of these series have kind of struggled, Vanguard in particular. So this is a little bit old. I think this is about a year old. Vanguard is kind of in the same position. Over the 3-5 year period, their tracking error is pretty horrendous. And they've taken a lot of flack, by the way, for kind of the institutional share absorbing the investor share and tax implications and tracking error for that. Fidelity and TIA have frankly brought this back and kind of in line with their fees. So I think it's hovering in the upper single or around like 10 basis points, which is basically just their fee. I think BlackRock is actually a little bit above their internal benchmark now because of securities lending and a few other cool things they do of crossing internal trades, et cetera. But I won't get into that. But I think this is important to look at. I mean, these are hidden fees. Sure, you're getting an 8 basis point TDF with Vanguard, but really, what does it cost beyond that you don't really see? Implicit fund costs. I know I jumped around quite a bit. Hopefully this was helpful. Of course, we appreciate your time and feedback and questions. So looking forward to the next one. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to see more from Matt and the flexPATH team, check out their TD Brief podcast, subtly plugged at the end of Matt's segment. These episodes are great for quick tidbits of information regarding TDFs and are easy to listen to while you're on the road, while you're doing some spring cleaning, or if you are just making some retirement plans. Now, last but not least, we have another Matt Foster, the VP Strategic Accounts Director from Franklin Templeton. He has the latest developments and value adds from Franklin Templeton, as well as an exciting announcement that he is very excited to share with you all.
Happy April Fool's Day, everyone. I know in most countries, the first day of April is considered April Fool's Day, and it gets its name from the custom of playing practical jokes on friends, family, and anyone you might come in contact with. Anything and everything go on this day for some people, but I promise you, we're not going to pull a fast one on you today. My name is Matt Foster, VP Strategic Accounts Director at Franklin Templeton. Today, we're here to give you some updates and hopefully provide you with a few key takeaways that you can put into your daily practice. First, the close of Putnam. We at Franklin Templeton are excited to announce the completion of our acquisition of Putnam Investments. On January 1st this year, almost 90 days or so ago, Franklin Templeton finalized its acquisition of Putnam Investments. We're excited to be adding the Putnam name to the list of specialist investment managers, or what we call SIMs, under the Franklin Templeton brand. This transaction further expands access to Franklin's SIMs, which represent public and private markets across asset classes and vehicles through a single powerful partnership. With an extensive range of specialized capabilities, we have over 1.6 trillion in assets under management, with 10 investment managers being added to our platform just since 2019. 1,400 investment professionals in 25 countries, and with a 75 plus year tradition of closely held family ownership, we continuously focus on stability, innovation, and long-term value creation. As part of the Putnam transaction and acquisition, this adds a target date fund range and complementary investment capabilities with scale, including in the areas of stable value and large cap value. The great news is that we have a number of strategies that score 8 to 10 on the RPAG scorecard, so be sure and take a look at the latest version. This also includes the 4 CITs available from the flexPATH strategies, which are large cap value, Putnam large cap value at 29 basis points, large cap growth, ClearBridge large cap growth at 29 basis points, Core Plus 2, which is Western Asset Core Plus Bond at 28 basis points, and of course, stable value, Putnam stable value at 31 basis points. Alongside our investment offering, we equip our clients with the tools, services, and knowledge necessary to actively plan for a better future. Our value add resources and programs have also been enhanced. Here are just a few of our key value add programs. First, my favorite, Voice of the American Worker, which is now actually called Voice of the American Workplace. This is the 4th year we've conducted the research, and this year is a little different because we've added surveys for workplaces in addition to doubling the number of workers that we studied. It's a survey sponsored by Franklin Templeton that aims to analyze the current state of the American workplace. This year's survey examines both employer and employee perspectives, emphasizing the crucial need for aligning expectations with valuable and available resources. By gaining a deeper understanding of employee desires, employers can effectively create loyalty and attract top talent. Second, Anatomy of a Recession, or AOR, which I know a lot of you are familiar with. Created by one of our specialized investment managers, ClearBridge Investments, it has investment concepts designed to deliver thoughtful perspectives on the state of the U.S. economy with concise, practical views updated every month. Our exclusive recession risk and recovery dashboards provide the statistical foundation of our perspective. And the ways that we promote the program, on a monthly basis, we release a new commentary, podcast, and a newsletter with an AOR subscription. So please be sure to subscribe. On a quarterly basis webinar, the next one is actually coming up on Tuesday, April the 9th, and we'd love to have you join us. There's an interactive dashboard, and this interactive version of our exclusive recovery and recession risk dashboard allows you to vary the settings for each of the 12 indicators based on the different scenarios that reflect your own views of future conditions. Both of these programs are available on the public side of our website at franklintempleton.com. Third, it includes now the addition of the Putnam's Visualizer suite of industry-leading digital tools to enhance your workflow. Plan Visualizer is to assist with designing and modeling retirement plans. You can model scenarios such as auto enrollment, automatic increases, and various plan matches to see their potential costs in real time. And then also the target date visualizer helps to identify how there is more to target date funds and target date strategies than just performance. There's more to a glide path than simply fixed income and equity allocation. See what separates those glide paths. And then finally, upcoming events where you'll see Franklin Templeton out on the road. The National Association of Plan Advisor Conference is coming up later this week. We're looking forward to seeing you, hopefully, in the Napa event in Nashville. Please join us on Tuesday, April the 9th, actually in the morning for our breakfast session to hear our voice of the American workplace, or stop by our booth, which is booth number 605. And then, of course, the upcoming regional RPAG summits. Join us for our panel discussion on artificial intelligence and the impact on the industry at one of the 4 summit events. In closing, Franklin Templeton's goal is to be your business building partner, offering you access to a suite of capabilities through one relationship. We are so appreciative of your business with Franklin Templeton through all the brands that we represent. Thank you for your partnership, and we look forward to continuing the exciting year ahead. Please reach out to me or your Franklin Templeton workplace retirement partner, and we'll be happy to help. And again, my name is Matt Foster, and thanks for your time and attention today. Have a great week.
So not only will you get one awesome session about AI from myself and Melody, but you're also going to get one from our friends at Franklin Templeton. I can't wait to see the insights they're going to share with you all. A big thank you to all of our speakers for today for sharing their expertise and insights with us. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching this April edition of the RPAG Scoop. Remember, the key to success in the retirement industry is staying informed and adapting to change. Don't forget to register for our upcoming regional summits. I'm talking to you. So until next time, take care and keep striving for excellence in all of your retirement planning endeavors.